Emily stared at the lawyer, her brow furrowed. Hollowridge House. The name hung in the air, heavy and unfamiliar, her great-aunt's sprawling estate left solely to her. Emily had only been there once as a child. The house with its shadowed windows and overgrown gardens had frightened her. She remembered her parents whispering about family secrets and the tragedy of Hollowridge. Now those whispers were hers to unravel. The lawyer, sensing her unease, cleared his throat. "It's a magnificent property, Miss Emily, though it will require some attention." His words did little to soothe her. Attention was an understatement. The house had stood empty for decades, a testament to forgotten sorrow. Still, a flicker of curiosity sparked within Emily. Perhaps it was time to face the past, to uncover the truth behind Hollowridge's mournful facade. With a deep breath, she made her decision. She would go to Hollowridge House. The drive to Hollowridge was long and winding, the road deteriorating as she neared the estate. Trees, gnarled and ancient, pressed close to the road, their branches like skeletal fingers reaching for the car. As the house came into view, a shiver ran down Emily's spine. It was just as she remembered, imposing, desolate, shrouded in an almost palpable silence. The air grew colder as she stepped out of the car. The silence was broken only by the rustling of leaves and the distant cawing of crows. As she approached the front door, massive and oak, she felt a prickling sensation on the back of her neck as if she were being watched. Taking a deep breath, she pushed open the door and stepped inside. Dust motes danced in the faint rays of sunlight that pierced the grime-covered windows. The air was stale, thick with the scent of decay and the weight of forgotten years. Emily wandered through the darkened rooms, her footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors. Each room seemed frozen in time, filled with remnants of a life once lived, a half-finished tapestry draped over a dusty frame, a child's doll abandoned on a rocking chair, a book lying open as if its reader had just stepped away. As Emily explored, she felt an unsettling presence growing stronger. It wasn't a tangible thing, but a feeling, a coldness that seeped into her bones. She tried to shake off the unease, attributing it to the house's state of disrepair and her own overactive imagination, but deep down a seed of doubt had been planted. Hollowridge House was not entirely empty. Something lingered within its walls. The first few nights at Hollowridge were the hardest. The silence was almost unbearable, broken only by the creaking of the old house settling around her. Sleep was a fleeting visitor, chased away by the slightest sound. The wind whistling through the broken window pane sounded like whispered words, the scurrying of mice in the walls like footsteps just beyond her door. One night, lying awake in the darkness, Emily heard it, a distinct thump from downstairs, followed by the soft, dragging sound of something heavy being pulled across the wooden floor. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through her. She told herself it was just an animal, a raccoon that had found its way in, but the sound had been too deliberate, too close to her room. Something was in the house with her. Section 5. The Diary of Eleanor Vance. Determined to find a rational explanation for the unsettling events, Emily began to delve into the history of Hollowridge House. She spent hours in the dusty attic, sifting through old documents and forgotten belongings. It was there, tucked away in a forgotten trunk, that she discovered a leather-bound diary. The diary belonged to Eleanor Vance, a young woman who had lived in the house a century earlier. As Emily read through the faded ink, a sense of dread washed over her. Eleanor's entries were filled with chilling accounts of strange occurrences, of whispers and shadows, of an unseen presence that haunted her every move. Eleanor's words mirrored Emily's own experiences with frightening accuracy. The diary entries grew increasingly frantic, filled with a desperate longing to escape the house's clutches. But there was no record of Eleanor ever leaving Hollowridge. The final entry ended abruptly, leaving Emily with a chilling question. What had happened to Eleanor Vance? Section 6. A presence makes itself known. As the days turned into weeks, the strange occurrences intensified. Objects moved on their own, doors slammed shut without a breeze, and disembodied whispers seemed to follow Emily from room to room. The feeling of being watched, once a fleeting sensation, became a constant, suffocating presence. One evening, while preparing dinner, Emily felt a cold hand on her shoulder. She spun around, her heart pounding in her chest, but saw nothing. The room was empty. Yet, the feeling of someone standing behind her, their breath cold against her ear, lingered in the air. Terror, raw and primal, took root in her mind. She was no longer alone in Hollowridge House. The presence, once subtle and elusive, had made itself known. Section 7. Fear's grip tightens. Sleep became impossible. Every creak of the floorboard, every sigh of the wind sent Emily's heart racing. She moved through the house like a wraith, her nerves frayed, her senses on high alert. The line between reality and nightmare blurred. One night she awoke to the sound of her name being whispered. It was close, too close. She sat bolt upright in bed, her breath catching in her throat. The room was dark, but she could sense a figure standing at the foot of her bed. Terror threatened to consume her. She fumbled for the lamp switch, her hand trembling. The light flickered on, revealing an empty room, but the feeling of someone or something standing there remained. Section 8. The Night of the Storm. A fierce storm raged outside, mirroring the turmoil within Emily. Rain lashed against the windows and the wind howled like a banshee. Thunder shook the house to its foundations, each boom echoing through the empty halls. As she huddled in the living room, a sudden crash from upstairs sent her scrambling to her feet. The diary. She had left it in the attic. Against her better judgment, she crept up the creaking stairs, her heart pounding in her ears. The attic was dark and oppressive, the air thick with dust and the smell of damp wood. As she reached for the diary, a cold wind slammed the attic door shut, plunging her into darkness. Panic seized her. She was trapped. Section 9. Trapped. Emily pounded on the door, her scream swallowed by the storm's fury, but the door wouldn't budge. It was as if an unseen hand held it fast. She sank to the floor, her back against the cold wood, fear constricting her throat. She was trapped, alone in the darkness with whatever haunted Hollowridge. The storm raged on, and with it, the house seemed to come alive. The whispers grew louder, morphing into taunting laughter. Cold spots swirled around her, and the air grew thick with the smell of decay. Section 10. Hollowridge's grip. Days turned into nights, and still, Emily remained trapped in the attic. The storm had passed, but the house had tightened its grip on her. She was weak with hunger and thirst, her hope dwindling with each passing hour. The presence was always with her now, a constant companion. She could feel its cold breath on her skin, hear its whispers echoing in her mind. It taunted her, reminding her of her isolation, her helplessness. It spoke of the house's long history of sorrow, of the souls it had claimed, of its insatiable hunger, and it promised her the same fate. Section 11. A warning unheeded. Years later, Hollowridge House still stands, its windows like vacant eyes staring out over the overgrown lawns. Locals whisper tales of its dark past, of the young woman who vanished within its walls, driven mad by the house's sinister embrace. But Hollowridge House remains, waiting patiently for its next unsuspecting victim. Some say that on stormy nights you can still hear Emily's screams echoing from the attic, a chilling reminder of the house's insatiable hunger, a warning to those who dare to cross its threshold. Hollowridge House never truly lets go,